Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're initiating a complete system upgrade for your brain. If you've ever felt completely paralyzed by procrastination or just physically exhausted by the mere thought of a hard task, you are in the exact right place. We're decoding the structural blueprint of true discipline directly from our source material. Override your brain, do hard things. There is no motivational fluff here, guys. We are diving straight into the architectural code of human behavior.
So, let's start by removing the guilt right now. You know that intense resistance you feel when facing a tough project or, say, an early morning workout? It is absolutely not a character flaw. It's actually just a legacy bug in your biological hardware. Think about it. Evolution designs your brain for comfort and energy conservation, not for crushing long-term, high-level growth. You're essentially trying to run modern ambitions on a really primitive operating system.
And looking at the architectural schematics of the disciplined brain we've pulled from the source, you can see exactly how we bypass that biological resistance. We are not going to try and negotiate with your brain's emotional center. No way. Instead, we're going to install hardwired bypass circuits to literally force execution.
Okay, so here's your system boot sequence for today. We'll run a system diagnostic, install a core hack, lay out the execution protocols, do a hardware reboot, cover cross-domain deployment, and finally hit the end state.
Right, let's kick off Phase 1, System Diagnostic, looking at the brain's default programming. Notice what the brain's highest priority is here? It's energy conservation. It uses this incredibly simple filter. Is this easy? And if the answer is no, boom, it throws a warning state, meaning that fatigue, the doubt, or that sudden, overwhelming urge to just check your phone, it's not a logical command to stop. It's literally just a physiological false alarm. Your brain is essentially trying to trick you into thinking you're out of gas, right when you're actually at the exact point where real growth happens.
Now, the absolute biggest vulnerability in our current programming is relying on this legacy OS of willpower, because willpower is finite, right? It drains super fast under stress, and it completely relies on constant internal negotiation. What we actually need to install is the override OS of identity. Identity doesn't drain. In fact, it compounds over time. It shifts the entire question from, can I push myself today, to what does someone like me do next?
If you check out the mechanism row here, it really highlights the difference. Under the Willpower OS, you're constantly debating with your feelings, which obviously leads to exhaustion and usually guilt. But flip to the Identity OS, and those draining debates are replaced by the quiet, solid predictability of absolute rules. The mechanism completely changes from a weak OR gate of negotiation to a definitive NOT gate of absolute, non-negotiable action.
Moving right along to Phase 2, the core hack, where we establish that action precedes motivation.
So, here's the crucial takeaway. Motivation is a result of momentum. It is never a prerequisite. Look at that invalid sequence crossed out on the left. Waiting around for motivation to spark your action is a completely flawed pathway. Instead, this drive inversion protocol shows us that the brain only registers effort as safe and releases motivation after you take immediate action. You don't wait to feel ready. You move, and the feeling catches up.
Check out the difference here. You've got that chaotic orange path of hesitation on top versus the straight blue path of execution on the bottom. Hesitation just invites endless analysis. Telling yourself you're just preparing or planning is actually a sneaky avoidance tactic. It activates your defense mechanisms and just feeds the fire of resistance.
So, to extinguish that spark before it turns into a total chaotic fire, you've got to apply the 60-second rule. When a hard task pops up, you have exactly 1 minute to initiate a physical movement toward it. That's it. Strip away all the planning, ditch the preparation rituals, and just execute a physical movement before your brain even gets the chance to open up negotiations.
All right, Phase 3, Execution Protocols. This is all about non-negotiation and minimum viable action.
See how conditional statements basically act like malware in your system? Phrases like, if I feel good, or I'll do my best. Those are invalid sequences. They get immediately blocked by the firewall because they leave way too much wiggle room for excuses. Your execution has to be pre-decided. When the time comes, action is non-negotiable. We're completely deleting I'll do my best and replacing it with absolute certainty.
Now, to sneak past the brain's totally natural fear of a massive task, you have to use Protocol 2, Minimum Viable Action. Look at that huge, threatening goal block on screen. Lowering your overall standard just trains your brain to escape, so we definitely don't do that. Instead, we shrink the entry point.
Your MVA is literally the absolute smallest first brick that preserves your identity of simply showing up. Don't commit to writing a whole chapter today. Commit to writing one single sentence. Your brain stops feeling threatened and momentum naturally takes over.
Which brings us to Phase 4, Hardware Reboot. It's time for the physical override.
As you can see, sitting down invites passive thinking. It basically hands authority right back to your mind, and you can practically see those invalid sequences swarming around. But by initiating a physical override signal, you force your body into an active neurological state. You are literally bypassing the brain's alarm system by using your physical body.
So when resistance hits you hard, do not just sit there overthinking it. Stand up immediately. That alters your blood flow. Next, take shallow breaths. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, which signals safety to your nervous system. And finally, physically touch your tools. Grab your mouse, hold your notebook, pick up the weights, whatever it is. Your body cares about direction, not motivation. This physical contact gives you instant direction and completely bypasses the mind.
Let's look at Phase 5, cross-domain deployment, or how we actually apply this override.
This universal deployment dashboard targets 4 main areas of your life: life and health, family and relationships, work and high pressure, and learning and growth. Let's break down exactly how this override protocol plays out in each of these dimensions. Starting with life and health, we're basically fighting the all-or-nothing perfectionism virus. The override here is the continuity protocol. You just commit to 5 minutes of physical movement to preserve that identity of someone who shows up. Over in work and high pressure, the bug is cognitive overwhelm from massive projects, right? The override there is entry point microtasking. You isolate the absolute first step, like literally opening a document and typing one single sentence, just to kill the ambiguity and bypass your brain's threat alarm.
It's the same idea in family and relationships. We so often wait for the right mood to have a tough conversation. Well, the override is bypassing that emotional filter altogether. Use physical action, like speaking the very first word within 60 seconds regardless of the internal tension you're feeling, to generate safety and engagement. And finally, for learning and growth, we swap out vague intentions for absolute, time-stamped triggers. Instead of saying, "I'll study if I have energy tonight," you say, "At 7 a.m. my hand touches the book." The behavior just shifts into an inevitable default state.
And finally, Phase 6, the ultimate end state, which is structural freedom. You know, people tend to assume that true discipline is this dramatic, intense emotional breakthrough where you finally conquer your inner demons. But look at the structural alignment path on this schematic. It's completely flat. True discipline isn't dramatic at all. It's ordinary, it's quiet, and it is incredibly reliable. It's really just the transition from chaotic, tangled hesitation into a predictable, structured response. You don't need to feel like a superhero. You literally just need to execute the structure.
I want to leave you with this foundational truth, distilled directly from our source schematics. You do not rise to the level of your intentions, you fall to the level of your systems. You really don't need more motivation, and you definitely don't need to consume another hyped-up explainer. You just need a system override. So looking at the architecture of your own life right now, which protocol are you going to install today to finally stop betraying yourself?